She said their names, under oath: Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Sean Diddy Combs. In a courtroom packed with tension, with reporters on edge and legal teams scrambling, Monique walked in quietly and then detonated a bombshell that left everyone speechless. This wasn't just another celebrity feud. This was federal testimony, backed with timelines, recordings, and evidence that connected Hollywood's most powerful figures to a disturbing web of silence and control. Today, we're diving into the explosive moment when an Oscar-winning actress looked the industry straight in the eye and said, "You thought no one would talk? Well, I'm talking now." What she revealed could shake the foundations of Hollywood, and it all started with a name they never expected to be spoken. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and the time you are watching this video? Let's light up this comment section. And hey, if you love celebrity gossip, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next chapter in these powerful, untold stories. The Diddy trial began like any other. Press crowding the courthouse steps, whispers of possible bombshells, reporters refreshing their notes, waiting for the next witness to shake the headlines. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared anyone for what happened next. The room was already tense. Prosecutors shuffled papers with purpose, Diddy's legal team exchanged glances, and the audience, already overflowing, braced for another long day of testimony. And then, in a moment no one saw coming, Monique entered the courtroom. Yes, that Monique, the Oscar-winning actress, the unapologetic comedian, the woman who's been speaking out for years about being blackballed in Hollywood, often dismissed, often ignored. She didn't walk in through the front. She came through a side entrance, quiet, focused, and radiating resolve. No one had her name on any witness list. The entire energy in the courtroom shifted. Diddy, dressed in a charcoal suit, leaned into his lawyer and whispered something, clearly caught off guard. His trademark stoicism cracked ever so slightly. Sketch artists scribbled faster, capturing the moment his jaw tightened and his eyes twitched. Then, Monique took the stand. She sat tall, calm, commanding, and with her very first words the room froze. "I was asked here to speak the truth, and that's what I intend to do." What followed was not just testimony, it was a reckoning. Monique had come prepared, not with vague allegations or emotional monologues, but with a timeline, receipts, audio transcripts, phone logs, a trail of breadcrumbs that connected names the public has only dared whisper in the same sentence: Diddy, Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, and even Bishop T.D. Jakes. She began walking the court through a chronology of her own blackballing, events that had long been treated as bitter actress grievances but were now entered into federal testimony. She detailed secret meetings, hushed phone calls, promises made and broken, all under the guise of opportunity. And this time, people were listening. The prosecution followed along carefully, cross-referencing her account with earlier testimony from Cassie Ventura. Slowly, a new picture began to form. This trial wasn't just about Diddy anymore. Monique's testimony was drawing a web of connections between power, silence, manipulation, and the calculated destruction of careers. Then came the first bombshell aimed not at Diddy, but at Tyler Perry. She described a phone call in 2018 where Perry admitted that the treatment she endured had been wrong. He promised to apologize publicly. He never did. And when she asked why, he told her something chilling. "If I go public, it'll blow back on people who aren't ready to be exposed." When asked who those people were, Monique turned to the jury and said clearly, "Puff, that's who he was worried about. Puff Daddy, Diddy, whatever you want to call him." The room erupted in murmurs. Even seasoned legal teams looked up in shock, because this wasn't gossip. This was courtroom testimony, under oath. And Monique was only getting started. The air was thick with tension after Monique's bombshell about Tyler Perry and Diddy, but she wasn't finished. Not even close. With the courtroom still stunned, she reached for a folder. Inside it was a printed transcript of a phone call with Tyler Perry, a conversation she had recorded with his knowledge. The courtroom braced. "He told me he was wrong," she said. "He said he would apologize publicly. He never did." Then came the chilling reason why. "He told me, if he apologized, it would blow back on people who weren't ready to be exposed." And when asked who those people were, Monique didn't hesitate. She looked directly at the jury and said, "Puff." The name hit the room like a hammer. Reporters scribbled furiously. The prosecution exchanged sharp glances. Diddy's legal team quickly rose to object, but the judge let her continue. What she was describing was no longer hearsay. It was beginning to sound like the backbone of a culture of coordinated silence. Monique testified that Perry had told her there were too many NDAs involved, too many people tied up in things they couldn't be seen around. She said that Perry admitted they'd all seen things at Puff's parties, things they were never supposed to talk about. And now, she was talking. Though the audio recording was not yet entered into evidence, pending authentication, the transcript was. The judge allowed it. It was real enough to be taken seriously, and the courtroom knew it. This wasn't just scandal, it was structure. It was how the system worked. Then came the turning point, the moment that would dominate headlines. Monique adjusted her microphone, took a breath, and dropped the line that cracked the courtroom's silence. "I've been to one of Diddy's parties, and I left because I saw something I wasn't supposed to." She recounted the story in detail. It was 2006. She had been invited to a private gathering in the Hollywood Hills by a fellow actor, someone she trusted. They told her it was an exclusive networking event. Nothing unusual. When she arrived, a valet took her phone. That was the first red flag. She was then escorted inside a lavish estate, lit with candles, R&B music playing in the background. At first it felt like a scene from a movie, until the scenes got darker. "I remember a woman in heels, and a man wearing nothing but a bathrobe," she said. "I remember being told, it's all about the experience here. You're safe if you sign the NDA." That's when she left. She didn't sign. She didn't participate. And from that night on, she said, everything changed. Her phone stopped ringing. Roles disappeared. Invitations to festivals, premieres, and interviews, gone. A producer whispered to her she was being labeled difficult, but she always suspected the truth, that her refusal to play the game, to comply, to stay quiet, had made her a liability. The prosecution asked if she believed her experience was representative of what happened at other events hosted by Diddy. "Yes," she said, "I think it was orchestrated, like a system." And her words aligned chillingly with previous testimony, from Cassie Ventura and others, describing similar environments. Luxury hotel setups, candles, hired escorts, cameras, and high-profile guests. But what made Monique's account hit differently was her status. She wasn't a background figure. She wasn't a backup dancer. She was a headliner, a respected actress. And yet, even she wasn't untouchable. Then came another direct hit, this time back to Tyler Perry. The prosecution asked, "Do you believe Tyler Perry actively protected Diddy's image?" She didn't blink. "Yes, I believe it was strategic, coordinated, part of a larger effort to keep things quiet." She brought up a now viral moment, Tyler Perry walking into Bishop T.D. Jakes' megachurch and writing a $1 million check in front of the entire congregation. While many saw it as a blessing, Monique said, "I saw a transaction. That donation wasn't just charity, it was damage control." She implied that the church itself was being used as a shield, a PR firewall to sanitize public perception and form alliances with religious leaders who added moral credibility to questionable figures. The judge noticed the jury taking furious notes. Even he looked up. Monique then made a final, damning connection. Just weeks after that donation, several gossip blogs that were running stories about Diddy's parties went silent. The rumors vanished, just disappeared. I knew then that people were being paid, influenced, silenced. That $1 million wasn't for the church, it was for peace, it was for silence. Then, the prosecution dropped photos onto the evidence monitor. Diddy and Tyler Perry smiling side by side at a BET event, arms around each other, just weeks after the church donation. The message was undeniable. Hollywood didn't just protect Diddy. It elevated him. It endorsed him. And when Monique refused to play along, the machine turned against her. The courtroom was silent, but the tension screamed louder than ever. Monique had just linked her blackballing to a system, not a coincidence, not a misunderstanding, but a structure. One designed to silence, control, and erase anyone who didn't play by the rules. And then, she leaned forward, lowered her voice, and delivered another blow. Some of them didn't play the game, some of them said no, and some of them saw things. things they were never supposed to see. You could feel the chill ripple through the courtroom. With the judge's permission, Monique read a redacted statement from a former actor, identity protected, who had attended a retreat hosted by a powerful male filmmaker. The details were eerily familiar. Phones confiscated at the door, contracts signed under dim lighting, and strange, ritualistic behavior cloaked as bonding experiences. Monique didn't say the filmmaker was Tyler Perry, but she didn't deny it either. She let the unease settle over the jury like fog. This wasn't just about abuse. This was about ritual, control, fear. The judge interjected briefly, reminding the room these were still allegations, but the damage was already done. Monique had done what no one else dared. Pulled back the curtain not just on a man, but on a machine. She turned the lens inward, and the courtroom watched her unravel her own downfall, step by step. She was asked directly, "Do you believe Diddy played a role in the sabotage of your career?" She didn't flinch. Yes. Not at first, but eventually, yes. And then she told the story of how she found out. After the fallout from Precious, when she refused to do the unpaid press tour and her difficult label began to circulate, she received a call from someone unexpected. A junior executive at Revolt TV, Diddy's media company. He told me, and I quote, "You rubbed the wrong people. It's not just about Tyler and Oprah. Puff don't like noise either." She said it clearly, calmly, with a kind of certainty that made every juror lean forward. That phone call opened her eyes. And soon after, she learned that Tyler Perry's team had been in quiet negotiations with Diddy's team about future media projects. And she was the obstacle. They wanted access to Puff's platforms, and I was the problem. She described multiple private meetings between Perry and Diddy, meetings she had no idea had taken place until much later. The topic of those meetings? Her name. Not as a talent, not as a colleague, as a problem to be managed. Then the prosecution made their move. They presented emails, digital evidence from a high-powered PR firm hired by both Revolt TV and Tyler Perry Studios. The subject line? Monique and Cassie Ventura. The content? Conversations about narrative management and reputation containment. For the first time in this trial, there was a direct digital trail linking two of the most vocal women in this case, being handled as liabilities by the same team. The courtroom was stunned. Monique leaned back, took a breath, and dropped another hammer. That word, difficult? They use it like a virus. Infect one casting director with it, and it spreads. Soon, your name comes up in a room, and they already have a reason to say no. And then came a line that echoed far beyond the walls of the courtroom. A line that struck deep, not just into the case, but into the soul of the industry. I wasn't blackballed. I was whiteballed by black people. People who looked like me. People who were more afraid of losing their spot than they were of doing right. You could hear pens drop, gasps. But Monique didn't pause. She pressed forward. I didn't want to be here, she admitted. But I needed to be. Because what they did to me, what they did to Cassie, what they're doing to so many women and men in this industry, it won't stop. Not unless someone says it out loud. With a mic louder than theirs. She revealed that she had been contacted by the prosecution 2 months prior. At first she said no. I wasn't going to relive it. I wasn't going to put my family, my trauma, my pain back in the public eye. But then, she said, everything changed. She saw the Prince video. She saw Diddy yelling in court. She saw Cassie break down on the stand. And that's when she broke. With raw emotion, Monique described the moment of clarity that changed her mind. I heard my grandmother's voice say, "Baby, don't let them write your story without you in the room." That's when I knew I had to come. Her voice didn't shake, her hands didn't tremble. She was no longer just speaking for herself. Then came the final question from the prosecution, the one that brought the entire room to a still silence. In your opinion, Miss Jackson, what is the root cause of this system of silence? Her answer? Fear. Fear of losing a job, fear of losing a deal, fear of losing your relevance, fear of telling the truth. Because people like Puff, like Tyler, and yes, like Oprah, they've made it very expensive to do so. And finally, with her eyes locked on Diddy, a man who once ruled the industry in silence, she said, "You thought nobody would talk, that you built an empire strong enough to silence everybody, but now you're sitting in silence, and I hope you finally hear us." She stepped down. Diddy's hands shook. His attorney whispered furiously in his ear. The gallery didn't erupt, but the energy shifted. Monique had walked into court, a woman written off as difficult, and walked out as the most powerful voice in the trial. The courtroom had barely recovered from the last wave of Monique's revelations when she delivered something even heavier. She turned toward the defense table, eyes locked, unblinking, and with chilling calm, she uttered a name that hadn't yet been spoken aloud during the entire trial. Tyler Perry. She didn't shout it, she didn't dramatize it, she simply said it. Like she was unloading a truth that had been burning in her chest for years. It was the kind of silence afterward that only happens when truth pierces through fear. People weren't confused. Tyler Perry wasn't on trial, but Monique wasn't accusing him of a crime. She was accusing him of something more insidious, protecting the system that enabled the crimes. You want to talk about power? You want to talk about silence? Ask Mr. Perry why I was blackballed after refusing to work for free, and then look who stood beside him at every event. The gallery gasped. This wasn't an implication anymore. This was a direct call-out. She was painting a picture, not of one man's downfall, but of an entire structure of protection, privilege, and silence that wrapped around men like Diddy, shielding them from consequences for decades. She continued, "He never lifted a finger to help me, but he made calls to make sure no one else would either. Ask the producers, ask the agents, ask Lee Daniels. I've got the call logs." And then she did something bold, something the defense immediately tried to stop. She lifted a folder. One the court hadn't seen. One not yet entered into evidence. "This has it all," she said. "The calls, the dates, the names. I didn't come here with feelings. I came with facts." The defense erupted in objection, but the moment had already landed. The jury heard it. A woman who had been branded as angry and bitter for years was now revealing that she had documentation, not just stories, not just suspicions, but cold hard evidence that names like Tyler Perry, Lee Daniels, and Sean Combs had not just failed to help her, they had collaborated to keep her quiet. And she wasn't finished. "I know who was at the parties," she said. "I know which NDAs were enforced. I've seen people sign them in front of me. I was told not to speak. And when I did, my work dried up. I was told, be grateful, you're lucky to be here." Then came the line that stunned even the prosecution. "I have audio, a phone call, Tyler apologizing for everything. He admitted he was wrong, but he refused to go public. He said it would ruin everything." She stared straight ahead. No tears, no shakiness, just truth. "I'm done protecting men who never protected me." The courtroom, once again, fell into that eerie silence, not out of respect, out of recognition. This was real. This was raw. This was undeniable. Because what Monique was now testifying to was not just about Diddy or even Perry. This was about the machine. Hollywood didn't just ignore the signs, it enabled them, funded them, defended them, built multi-billion-dollar careers around silence. And now that silence was breaking. As she stepped down from the stand, every eye in the room followed her. The prosecutors had brought her in to offer context, but what they got was a cultural indictment. A raw, unflinching look into the silent economy of favors, secrets, hush money, and NDAs that held the entertainment industry together. For the first time in the trial, it wasn't just Diddy on trial. It was Hollywood itself. As the courtroom settled into a haunting stillness, the gravity of what had just been said hung in the air like smoke. Monique had done the unthinkable, not just testified, but told the truth in a room where truth usually comes with a price tag. And then she looked directly at the jury and said what everyone in the room had been avoiding. "You thought nobody would talk," she whispered, eyes locked on Diddy. "That you built an empire strong enough to silence everybody. But now you're sitting in silence, and I hope you finally hear us." Every word in it cut deeper than evidence ever could. Because it wasn't just about what she had seen, it was about what everyone else had let happen. The jury didn't just see a woman. They saw a career sacrificed, a voice buried, and a truth finally rising to the surface after years underground. Then came the moment that flipped the courtroom dynamic entirely. Monique, after exposing the silence machine built around Diddy, Tyler Perry, Oprah, and the entire Hollywood power structure, revealed one last truth. There is a list in Hollywood. It's not written down, but everybody knows it exists. It's the list of people you don't speak against, the untouchables. Puff was on that list. Tyler was on that list. And Oprah, she practically created it. She wasn't speculating. She was exposing. She explained that the list wasn't literal, but it was real. An invisible force field. A boundary no actor, director, or writer dared cross. Because when you did, you weren't just ignored, you were erased. Monique talked about people who had vanished. Actors, musicians, creatives who had one hit, one breakthrough moment, and then were gone. Not because they weren't talented, but because they didn't fall in line. Some of them didn't play the game, she said, and some of them saw things they were never supposed to see. Then she paused, let that hang for a moment, and said the line that shook even the defense team. They'll take your career, your reputation, your peace, and leave you to explain to the world why your phone never rings again. This wasn't just an emotional testimony, it was a blueprint of how silence is weaponized, of how power is maintained, and how stories like hers are not the exception, but the rule. And then the final question from the prosecution. In your opinion, Ms. Jackson, what is the root cause of this entire system of silence? No hesitation, no stalling, just truth. Fear. Fear of losing a job, fear of losing a deal, fear of losing relevance, fear of telling the truth, because people like Puff, like Tyler, and yes, like Oprah, have made it very expensive to do so. In that moment, the courtroom felt like it stopped breathing. Because Monique didn't just testify, she put the entire system on trial. And when she stepped off the stand, even Diddy, the man who once commanded silence with a stare, sat trembling, his lawyer whispering in a panic. The gallery didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But they felt it, the shift. The moment when one voice, ignored, mocked, blackballed for over a decade, became the most powerful force in the entire courtroom. Monique had spoken, and Hollywood would never be able to pretend it didn't hear her. As Monique stepped down from the stand, there was no applause, no cheers, just a stillness so deep it felt like the courtroom itself was holding its breath. She hadn't just testified. She had exposed a truth many already suspected, but few dared to say. This wasn't just about Diddy. It wasn't even just about Tyler Perry or Oprah. It was about a system, polished on the outside, rotting on the inside. A system where silence is currency, where speaking out costs your career, and where truth is a threat to power. Monique paid that price. She lost roles, opportunities, and peace of mind. But on this day, in this room, she didn't flinch. She looked power in the face and said what the industry had tried to bury. I saw what you did. I know who you protect. And I'm done being quiet. Her testimony wasn't a performance. It was a reckoning. And as she walked out of that courtroom, the weight of what she'd said didn't fade. It echoed. Through every studio, every boardroom, every exclusive party hidden behind velvet ropes, the silence that protected the powerful had been broken. And now the world was listening. If this moment matters, if truth still has value in a world built on illusion, then this story cannot fade into the background. This isn't just entertainment. It's evidence, it's history, and it's far from over. If you think this story matters, if you believe truth deserves a platform, don't let it disappear into the algorithm. Like this video to push it further. Comment below, do you think Monique's testimony will finally change anything in Hollywood? And if you're new here, subscribe, because we're not done exposing the stories they want you to forget. This is just the beginning.